It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Derek to the North American Egg Spotlight, and I wanted to interview you. You're from Nebraska, and you're from MetosUSA, and the host of United We Ag.
That's correct. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for taking out some time to be with us today.
It worked out good because we were talking a little bit before where we got one day left with beans, and fortunately we can't really start cutting until 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning anyway. So we've got some time in the morning.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. So despite being in business and a podcast host and you farm, that's pretty cool.
Some days, yeah.
Yep.
It can be busy, but some days, yeah, it's good though. And everything kind of all ties together. So it makes it easy to focus.
Right. That's good. Awesome. So tell us about the podcast. How long have you been in it, and how's it going?
My podcast is called United We Ag. Actually, I pulled up the website because I can't remember when the actual first launch date was, but we launched on May 28th of this year, so not too terribly long. It's been going really, really well. It's a lot of fun talking to different people from all over the world. That I would say we probably had about a month of legwork beforehand, just kind of defining or what it was going to be. And I had some people that were giving me some insights at the beginning, and then it has kind of evolved to be just me and really Ryan, who I interviewed in episode 3 as part of the an Ag Oddity edition. So every couple of episodes I throw in, it's called an Ag Oddity edition, where it's somebody that you wouldn't really expect. So like in his case, he's a farmer, but he also creates like synthetic pop style music, and he's released his own record. He's like released and produced his own album, kind of all by himself. And it's not what you would anticipate a farmer to do in his spare time, but that's kind of one of the central themes of the show, is that there's really no one way for a farmer to look, and there's not one way or one thing for a group of things for a farmer to be interested in. And we are all kind of tied together with our common bond in agriculture, but it doesn't necessarily have to be all aspects of life. There's farmers and people involved in ag come in all shapes and sizes and creeds, and that's kind of the whole notion of what we were trying to do is just to highlight that there's more to ag than just what we see, corn, soybeans, and cattle, which that's the world I grew up in. So I'm very well aware of the impact of that, but ag is just such a big and beautiful world that so many people are involved in, and the more kind of conversations that we can have with everybody and highlighting a lot of the the interesting kind of fringe territories of ag, I think the better off we are as an industry.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so what's your background?
I grew up, I'm from a farm in eastern Nebraska, and it's kind of funny if I were to show you a Google map of the farm that I grew up on right now, it would be a neighborhood. So there's like on the outside of Omaha, there's a kind of a town to the southwest and a town to the northwest called Gretna, Elkhorn, and Omaha. And we were kind of right in the middle of all three of those. And so when our ground had gotten kind of eaten up by the urban sprawl, I think you call it, we just kept moving a little bit farther west. And so we've grown corn and soybeans. We used to have some, very, very, I mean, I think like for 2 years we had chickens when I was a kid, and we had sheep for like one season, and never really were big on livestock. It's been mainly corn and soybeans. And then after I graduated, I went to college in Arizona for agricultural business is what my major was. So I went to Arizona State, and I wasn't quite sure exactly when I first went down there where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do, but I think it took about a year and a half of being away to realize that I really wanted to be back close. It didn't necessarily have to be like right down the street from Dad, but that's the way it ended up. But initially, when I the summer between my junior and senior year of college, I was lucky enough to get an internship with Cargill. So I moved to Minnesota, Pipestone, Minnesota, and was a crop scout for a summer. And then that kind of jumped into a job as a fertilizer and seed chemical salesman, which agronomy sales is kind of the blanket title for that. And the cool thing about Cargill when they were in the crop inputs business is they had one of the best internal trainings that you can imagine. Wow. When it comes to making sure that all of the people that are selling the agronomist have technical knowledge on agronomy, and it's all the same message. So Cargill's internal training program, both in sales and agronomy, was unlike anything I've seen anywhere else in the industry. It was very hands-on. It was very informative, and they went out of their way to bring in specialists and people like professors from colleges all over the Midwest to help grasp some concepts, and then again it turned us into better salesmen and just better agronomists. So that was invaluable as far as I'm concerned, as far as experience goes. And then back in 2012, I had the opportunity to come back to around the Omaha area and get a little bit more involved with the farm. I had a seed dealership into soil sampling. So with that, I was working with an outfit out of Iowa, and I was doing some soil sampling for them and then some for us. And then I'd met a bunch of kind of small businesses throughout eastern Nebraska and was able to offer them soil sampling services where they could turn around and sell it to their customers. I would go pull it, and then everybody would make a little bit of money into it. And it was a lot of fun. I got to see, I still to this day love soil sampling. It sounds dumb, but just being out in the Ranger and you're seeing every aspect or every part of that field, and you can tell where it sounds odd, but you can tell where the better parts of the field are just from riding the Ranger back and forth across it. And you can see the residue and where it's thicker, and where when you get off, if you're in a cornfield and you get off and you physically are tripping over the corn stalks because they're still so strong on the ground, you're like, this was probably a better part of this field. One of my favorite things to do is I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks, and I would download. I mean, I think my Audible account on my phone has got like 200 books on it.
Yeah.
And I would just plug in a book, and it would be 14 hours a day, just listening to a book from start to begin or from start to end, and then jump into the next one. It was a unique experience. You got to be outside, and most of the time the weather was kind of in between being too hot and too cold, so it was enjoyable. And the more of the analysis side, and I was using some software where we were able to take all of the actual inputs from, it didn't matter what color monitor you had, if it was red or green or blue, and taking all that data and putting it into a software, and then layering your soil samples on top of it, so you could really say, all right, what's my yield in my high fertility areas versus my yield in my low fertility areas, and then trying to draw correlations, and basically if you plug real numbers into there for corn price and for fertilizer price, but you can start to see, all right, does it make sense? Like, is some of my poorer ground, is it reaching its maximum? Like, is it worth trying to go off of just a soil test, a soil analysis to try and raise these levels? Right. Or is there something else happening in these acres where it's just not worth spending the money in? And at that time, it was kind of that 2014, 15, 16, where, I mean, farm margins were tight. I mean, they've always been tight, but tighter than usual. So my goal was, all right, well, we're doing this with soil samples. So now let's bring in planting information and seed data, and let's bring in chemicals and spray applications. And then let's bring in overhead and how much does it cost you to run your combine. And it just got to the point where I wanted to build a very comprehensive, I want to factor in everything that you're paying down to crop insurance on an acre and put all of that into a comprehensive kind of diagram to show what is my profit per acre look like on a totally intimate level. The biggest thing when you're working with data management is crap data in is crap data out. And you can't expect any kind of software. You can't expect any kind of person that doesn't have an intimate knowledge of your farm, who's maybe sitting 3 or 4 states away, to really understand all of the different things that are happening on that farm all year long.
So is this what inspired the podcast, or is all these thoughts that kind of built up to, you have something to add to this world?
Well, this is just my background.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of things kind of went into the podcast, and it's funny. So from that, John Deere decided they weren't going to continue with their Field Connect water probes systems anymore. And so the company, MetosUSA, got brought in to take over all of John Deere's Field Connect business and transition old stations out for new stations. And then I was working with a gentleman who lived in St. Louis, but was he was from Australia, and really, really smart guy, had a doctorate in agronomy and really understood the mechanics of water management. But he was covering the entire Midwest. And after 2 years, he had quit. And so I was contacting the general manager of this company out in Sacramento to get my stations on and turned on. And one day we were just having a conversation, and he starts asking me questions about, what took you to Arizona State? And I was like, are you browsing my LinkedIn page or something? And
wow.
He said, well, yeah. He goes, I need somebody in the Midwest, and I honestly think that you would be a good fit. Me and my wife sat down and just kind of thought what this transition could be. And so that's what had spurred me. So now that's when I started working with MetosUSA, actually October 1st of this year. So in 2 days is technically my 1-year anniversary with MetosUSA.
Anniversary.
So
what a crazy year it's been for your first year working with them.
It definitely has. Yeah. So what had happened with the podcast and how it got going was, we had I was out one day out in Western Nebraska out in the Panhandle, kind of when the pandemic was starting. And I thought I was being funny. I took a picture, and I'm out. There's nothing but cows for 20 miles in all directions. So I put my mask on and I take a selfie in front of one of our weather stations, and I sent it to, everybody all over the world, and just to kind of be funny. And our GM was like, well, you should put that on social media. And found out we didn't really have any social media. We didn't have a Twitter account or Instagram or Facebook really. They were set up, but nobody had been active on them. So he had kind of handed me the keys to the social media and the marketing aspect of things. And one day we get a call from a gentleman in Michigan, and he's using a weather station, one of our Metos weather stations, and he's saying he can't get something to work. And we're looking up, trying to find the serial number, and it's not online. And so our CEO kind of gets involved and looks at the serial number, and usually our serial numbers are 7 numbers, and this was only like 4 or something. And Godfried realizes that this was a station that he had sold like back in 2003. It's been in the field for 17 years without any problems. Wow. And he's like, when I first started selling in the United States, I flew in, and I was just rented a car and driving around selling directly. And so it was an apple grower in Michigan, and he was using the station. And so our GM said, try and get this guy to do an interview. And the whole thought was, we're just going to do an interview, put it on our website, have it be a fun use case. The gentleman was older, wasn't really into that. But we had already kind of talked about this process of getting interviews done and starting it. And so I had found a couple other interviews, because I was going to have some follow-up ones to do. And that's kind of the birth of the podcast. So it started off.
It wasn't like, I'm going to make a podcast. It was, oh, well, now that we're interviewing.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
it was like, now that we're interviewing, let's kind of branch out, and we can still tell some stories about, some of our customers, which there's some really fun things that are coming forward. And my big thing is, if we're going to do this, I mean, it can't be something that's just, let's talk about meadow stations every day. It's got to be, let's get a wide range. So we decided on a theme. And they're very, I mean, to my knowledge, I know that they listen, because they always make comments across the world of like, oh, last week's show was great. And but as far as actual selecting the guest, it's more of, me, and I usually bounce ideas off of Ryan, who's my editor and co-producer. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. It wasn't just oh, I want to get my face and voice out there, so let's start a podcast. Yeah. It was more, we had intentions of doing interviews for the website for use cases to help increase sales, and this is just kind of the natural evolution of things. So
the timing coincided with everyone figuring out what to do with COVID. Did that align with it? Was that, one of the reasons?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, yeah, I would say we were looking for interesting ways to reach out and get our name known when MetosUSA. And I would say it was almost a blessing and a curse at the same time that COVID happened. A blessing because more people were looking into digital. I mean, more people were sitting behind a computer, more people were listening to things, but a curse in that I can't even tell you. I think the hundreds of thousands of podcasts that started this year specifically. I mean, it took like 3 weeks just to get a microphone. Yeah. Back in April, because everything was sold out. Yeah. And it was kind of the general thing as well. I'm stuck in my house anyway, so I might as well broadcast myself to the world. And I would say it definitely, there's some that I saw that started up that, I joined some social media groups, particularly on, Reddit and Discord, where it was kind of a resource for how do you get started and to network with others. And there's some that have already kind of fallen off. And I said, we made it to this week will be our 15th episode coming out. So I think we're kind of over the hump. It's more of just a routine now. It's not a special plan. I've got the shows and interviews pretty much scheduled until almost January, I would say. And it's fun now because there are people that are actually reaching out and saying, hey, we've heard the show. We like the message, and it's not just the conventional, agricultural, farm, Midwestern farmers or American farmers. Even it's people from around the world and that are doing some interesting things in agriculture. So that's probably the most rewarding thing is that when I do get a comment or somebody just takes a minute to say, hey, I listened to your show, I really enjoyed it. And sometimes that's a family member or a friend, and sometimes it's somebody that's completely random. And that's that. I mean, even though I know there are shows out there with much higher viewerships than what I've got currently, but it's still fun to see that interaction and to have people actually reach out and say, hey, we want to be a part of this. So
that's really cool. Yeah. So what kind of values do you look for in an interviewee? What is it? Who's that person that you're always looking for?
I would say it's pretty broad. The main thing is I want to find somebody that can teach us something. So I want to find somebody that's doing something, that's either unconventional or involved with education in some way, shape, or form. My last episode was with Kelly Foreman at the Kodiak Baptist Mission in Alaska. And so I want her to spend some time talking about, all right, what is it like to run the only goat dairy in the state of Alaska? Right. And like, what is the process of a micro dairy? Because it's you hear of dairies and these big operations. I mean, not necessarily big and small, but she's a one-stop shop where she milks the goats and then goes directly into the pasteurization process and then goes directly into the bottling. So she puts the labels on the bottles and then physically walks them to the store to sell them. So, I mean, it's the whole micro dairy concept is something that was kind of new to me. And then also they operate a fully functional preschool, kindergarten, outdoor program that's strictly based on education on animal stewardship and natural stewardship. So I always like for there to be an educational aspect of things, even if it's not necessarily, somebody that's used to strictly educating. I'd say at least half the show is, tell us what it is in depth that differentiates you. I have a little 3 to 5 minute segment called the Farm Breakdown right in the beginning, where it's take 3 to 5 minutes and explain this to me as if I have never heard it before.
Right.
So like Matt Griggs, I said, explain the process of growing cotton as if I'm somebody that has never heard of cotton before.
Wow.
And so, as we're compiling these, Ryan and I are working to have just little 5-minute clips and release them as a separate, I wouldn't say they're their own podcast, but there'll be platform like that where we'll just have, a 5-minute introduction to, like Jess Peters was dairy farming. Matt Griggs was cotton farming. Kelly Foreman was goat dairy / micro dairy. And that way, if somebody just wants to know a quick little intro about it, they can go to another resource and have just that little 5-minute interview, hearing it straight from the people that are living it.
And I love that format too, because, we're from Canada and, we service all of North America, but we don't know anything about cotton. So if they jumped into a conversation and I wouldn't have any idea. So it's nice to break that down too. And, we have how many different crops across North America. So it's really cool that we get to learn about it too. Something I really like about your podcast.
Well, thank you. And so the education part is probably that's the main thing that I look at, especially if I'm seeking out a guest or if I want to talk about something that's particular. I would say, you get trapped in the beginning of wanting to just reach out to the biggest influencer that you can find and see if you throw a lot of hooks out to see if you can catch anybody that would be willing to talk, and that can be really, really awesome, and that can also be not so awesome. My biggest goal or my biggest direction is there are a lot of shows out there that are just, let's bring in this farmer and then that farmer and then this farmer and let you tell your story, which and that probably makes up 80% of the shows that I listen to. I really enjoy that format, but there's a lot of them. and I really wanted to differentiate from that. So I just wanted to branch out a little bit more, talk about some more unconventional sides of things, talk to people throughout the world. With MetosUSA, our parent company is Pestle Instruments. They're based out of Austria, and we have subsidiaries all over the world. So with some of my colleagues in Turkey and Australia and Brazil, I've got access to a lot of, international people to come on and talk about how it is to farm in their area. I've got some really fun ones coming up here in the future with some soil agronomists from Australia talking about what they do. And I think the surprising thing that we'll all realize is farming is not that much different anywhere. We all have the same problems. We all worry about the same weeds. We all worry about the temperature, the weather. We might look different doing it, we might have different times of the year that we do things, but we all kind of fight the same battles year in and year out. And there's no sense in saying there's no us versus them when it comes to agriculture. It's everybody's in it together. And another thing with ag is it's so diverse that literally anybody can be a part of it. It doesn't matter if you're a commercial row crop farmer or if you're a dairy, if you're a cattle ranch, if you're a hay farmer, a hot pepper farmer in South Carolina. It doesn't matter if you're a gardener. Gardening has been one of the, probably, I would say the gardening aspect of COVID has been probably one of the biggest positives, because me and my son built this big raised bed and he was involved in every process of building it. He helped me hold up the wood. I mean, he was holding up wood while I was screwing it together and helped me fill it up with dirt. And it's just kind of like a personal pride thing for him now. So, but every morning it's, let's go check the garden. Let's go check the garden. And he's just really, really into it. And so like that has been one of the, probably the better unintended side effects of this whole deal. But even people that are really into gardening, I mean, that's agriculture. You're a part of our community. You're a part of our world. So there needs to be just more content, as far as I'm concerned, that covers everybody, and content that is not just specifically made by farmers, specifically for farmers. Content that everybody can find some kind of appeal, and at the end of the day, learn something that they didn't know. Because the more we can learn, the better off we all are going to be.
For sure. Have you had any lows in this time? Like any struggles through production or with, finding people or tech?
I mean, I would say the lows as far as the podcast goes. I mean, there's been a couple of people that, I've been really excited for where the interview fell through. There have been times where it's been a little bit disheartening, but they're definitely, I wouldn't say it's been anything that's negative. I mean, because I understand it is what it is.
Crazy life, especially.
Yeah, I mean, and I always think of it like this: if something came up and I did that to somebody, like, I would really appreciate it if they had the mentality of, you know what, I understand things happen, and especially in agriculture, it's everything is always so day to day. So I really try not to take it personally, and I try not to get mad because I don't know what your circumstances are, and if unless you literally say something rude to me on social media, which hasn't happened. Forgetting is forgetting, or getting busy it is what it is. So that would probably be the lows, is just a couple of guests that I was really excited for that just kind of fell through, but it happens. And
yeah, what do you think was your greatest moment so far?
My greatest moment so far, I'm not sure if I can talk about it yet. Because it has to do with a couple of episodes that are coming out here in the next couple of weeks. But all I can say is that it's something that it ties in two of my biggest passions, I would say, and agriculture is one of them, and there's another one, and it was one of those where when I got the email, I was jumping up and down. And my first call was my wife, and I just like screenshotted the email and I sent it to my wife, and I was like, in like the wide-eyed emoji, and then I sent it to Ryan, and I sent it to my brother, and I was just like, oh, I got him. And it was one of those moments, and it'll come. I will make sure to send you an email when I have my little promotion ready, but I've learned my lesson not to do any promotion until the actual physical interview is done.
Right. Yeah.
Because I have had a couple of experiences where I did a promotion, or I promoted something, and then it got pushed back by like 3 months. And I'm sitting here like, oh no. And so I would say that's definitely the best day so far. But also, the first launch was awesome because we're really, really busy writing. I try to do a lot of research before I have somebody on, so that I don't sound like a fool. One, but I also want to try and understand the angle that each guest is coming from, or at least have a knowledge of what they do, so that we can have a real conversation. And so when we first started, it was a couple of weeks of really intricate like research into what questions I'm going to ask, and then I launched 4 episodes. When I first initially launched at the end of May, I launched 4 episodes at one time, and 3 of those 4 episodes were all recorded on the same day.
Wow.
And so it was really, really fun. It was nerve-wracking because it was the first 3. So it was the first time I was behind an audio, first time behind a mic. And, but it was like a trial by fire, I call it. And it was really, really fun. And I feel like by the end of the 3rd episode, I definitely felt like, all right, I can do this. It was a lot of the jitters had gone away, and there still is some at when we start recording, or if I have somebody on, I use a platform called Discord, just because I find the quality, if we're not doing video, the quality of the audio is a little bit better. And there's always like 15 minutes of just kind of small talk beforehand to get the jitters out, because they happen to me just as much as anybody. So
yeah. Well, that's really cool. Well, thank you so much for all this, and I can't wait to hear of the latest releases, and we're also going to be promoting your podcast on NorthAmericanAg.com as well.
Thank you.
And our launch is October 1st, so it's coming up fast. So,
well, actually, for your launch date, we're going to go a little off schedule, but I have a couple of shows they're just kind of sitting in limbo right now, waiting. So I've got a really cool one to launch on the 1st alongside with you, and that's with anybody that's familiar with Eastern Nebraska or frequents pumpkin patches. we sat down with Tim Valla from Valla's Pumpkin Patch, which is
Oh,
one of the premier pumpkin patches in the country, as rated by Travel Channel. I think it's in the top 10 in the country. And just a little bit about the agritourism business and how that's evolved. I mean, 35 years ago, he started by selling strawberries and pumpkins out the bed of an old pickup truck, and now he's got 450 acres of pumpkins and one of the biggest apple orchards in the state of Nebraska that just kind of crept up overnight. And yeah, like 450 acres of attractions, haunted houses, stuff for the kids, playgrounds. They've got, apple cannons, pumpkin chunkins. They've got campfires. They've got live music, all sorts of things. It's just one of the quintessential fall items in this part of the state. So I'm really excited for that. Tim was a great guy. I got to meet him in person after we did the interview, and they had a kind of an apple picking festival that my wife and two kids and I went up and took advantage of that one day. So it was very, very fun. And Valas has always kind of held a special place in my heart, because my birthday is an end of October birthday. So growing up, as long as we weren't in the field, every like friend birthday party I had was always at Vala's. So it's been one of those things that I've gone there every year, and now to see my kids find so much joy in it, it was definitely one of the highlights of doing this so far, was talking to Tim just about what his journey's been and how what his unique angle on agriculture is from a 2 months out of the year perspective. So
wow.
but we'll launch that on the 1st with you. So
Awesome.
looking forward to it.
Great. Very good. Well, thanks so much for your time. And it was really awesome getting to know you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. The way we conduct business in agriculture has endured a drastic change. Our handshake industry has traditionally been face-to-face, but with the cancellation of in-person events and farm shows, everyone has had to adapt. From farms to manufacturers to service providers. With a dizzying array of marketing and digital business choices, you need to make the right decisions or risk not being seen at all. If you need advice or a customized plan for your business, don't hesitate to reach out to me at chrissywozniak.com or chrissy.info, because that's easier to spell, CHRISSY.info. Don't risk not pivoting your business. Find the path that will take you into the digital space and be seen by our industry.